If I were to be asked who's there or who is this? What is this? What is it really? Well, my first and foremost answer is I really don't know. But I suspect was there before I got there, and it's going to be there long after I leave. But it got an attachment to me. Maybe it liked me, maybe it didn't. It never hurt me, but it surely scared me to death on hundreds of occasions. Who's there? It's beyond my understanding as to exactly what it was, but I know for a fact it was there.
The paranormal. Ghostly hauntings. Demonic possessions. Horses lingering beyond their time.
My family, I'd say I grew up, pretty religious, and I don't know if it's, in the Christian faith, you believe that when you die, you either go up or down. There's not much talk about, those that, stick around. I'm Jonathan King, and I definitely believe in the paranormal. It's something I've dealt with all my life. I mean, ever since I was a little boy, I can recall, hearing or seeing things. It all started with my grandfather. I don't know, I guess I was probably 7 or 8 years old. He passed. I remember waking up and looking next to me, and he was sitting beside my bed. Okay, maybe I'm dreaming, maybe I'm seeing things. I wipe my eyes, put my head back to the pillow, close my eyes, open them again, and he was still there. Now, in this experience, I wasn't scared. I mean, it was my grandfather. I was honestly kind of glad to see him, but at the same time, you're 7 years old, and you see something like that, it's kind of crazy.
Man, I think I somehow have a connection to this. I lived in central Mexico, and I always caught, like, out of the corner of my eye, this black image. It was kind of like a guy in a black trench coat with a hat, and I would see him around the house here and there. And all the walls are white in Mexico, basically so that you can see if you have scorpions or nasty bugs, you know where they are. But I would see this guy now and then, and I asked my son, I said, "Do you see this guy in a trench coat and a black hat?" He said, "Yeah, I see him too." And I approached the owner, Willie. I said, "Willie, is this place haunted?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "It's got a guy in a black coat with a hat." He said, "Yeah, that's the guy." I said, "I see him all the time." It was just coming around like the corners of the walls or off, not directly in front of you, but like off to the sides and things like that. So I thought that to be very odd. Sometimes, I've heard that when you feel like you're not alone, you're really not. There's a spirit, there's something with you. I don't seek this out because I think if you seek it, some things are going to attract to you, and some of these things maybe you don't want around you. But I just think like I'm kind of connected in this way. Kind of strange.
Due to the circumstances of my life experiences, I am 100% without a doubt that there's a bigger spiritual world that any of us understand. I don't claim to be a professional in this industry, but when they contact you, you know. And when you know, you then become a believer. And that's where I stand to this day. I am not surprised or shocked on anything that I see on the funny TV shows that you watch on TV. You know, I enjoy them, and I kind of pick them apart. I don't mock what my experiences are because I know they're real and they've made me a true believer. And because of that, I've now backwards researched and found other compelling evidence around the world that what I was seeing was not my imagination. So for that, I am a true believer of the spiritual world and hauntings and paranormal presence. It's just, it's something that I love to talk about, and I believe it wholeheartedly.
My name is Jennifer Kensler-Lehman. I am the founder of Happy Healing for You, a community healing center located in Taylor, South Carolina. I have been a medium and experiencing paranormal activity in my life since I was 5 years old. I am originally from upstate New York. I've lived in New York and South Florida, and ultimately I've come back to South Carolina, and I have experienced paranormal activity in all of the states that I have lived in. So it's definitely not secluded to one specific area or phase of my life. As a medium, I am able to see, hear, and interact and feel with spirits that are on the other side. Sometimes they're human spirits, sometimes they are not, like I experienced many times. But I have the unique ability, we all have the ability, I should say that. I believe everyone has the ability to talk with spirit. I just have that muscle really well flexed in my brain. It allows me to connect people from the other side to people who are still living. A lot of times we call it the psychic gaze, where if I'm in a reading and I'm listening to spirit, my gaze always shifts right off to the side, and I kind of tilt my head just a little bit because it's like I'm listening to this alternate frequency, this different frequency that spirit resonates on. And in doing that, I'm able to provide messages to people who are still left behind. I'm able to work with private investigators and police force on cold cases to try to help identify missing pieces of a case that could potentially bring a lot of peace and healing to the family members and those who are left behind. When I was 5 years old, my parents had a small farmhouse in upstate New York, and our chimney had burned down. We had a chimney fire, so we ended up having to move in. They moved us to a very small town called Bloomingburg, New York. The house, when we first moved in, was beautiful. It was a white ranch. It was super shiny floors. They had just redone the floors, and it was a really exciting opportunity for our family. And once we moved into this house, I started realizing that there were things in the house that no one else could see, no one else was feeling or hearing. And at 5 years old, I was told it was just my imagination. It wasn't really that big of a deal, and we kind of just dismissed it. One of my very first interactions with spirit in that house was noticing that there was an energy presence outside of my bedroom door. It would stand in the hallway outside, and it was like a presence that wouldn't allow me to walk past. I'd be coming down the hallway, and I would feel like I have to move to the side in order to make it past whatever was in the hallway. Over time, that energy gained lots of strength, and it started to reveal itself to me, and I could see what it looked like. It was an animal standing on two legs on the bottom and had a large muscular chest. And he would stand and hold this cup in his hand. And I had he would stand there and turn this cup over. And, now I realize it was probably like the sands of time. As a child, I would think it was a cup of yogurt. And he would pour it upside down and into this invisible cup. And I could see the liquid filling up in the cup as I was going, as the time was passing. I had, from the time he started to the time he finished, to get past him and into my bedroom around the corner. Otherwise, he told me he would take me. The more that this grew in strength, the more that I noticed in the house, I didn't want to be alone anywhere. I would hang out in my closet. I would cover myself in clothing and just sit in the corner with my hands over my ears and just pray and pray that it would go away. It never really went away. Some days it was less, some days it was more, but that energy in the hallway terrified me. It ended up having a really big influence on my ability to handle being in the dark. I never wanted to be in the dark, ever alone. And it was because in the dark, I could still see it. I could see it, I could hear it, and I could feel it. It was a hot breath as I would walk past it, almost like you could feel it just breathing down on you and down on your neck. I know that sometimes when I would go downstairs in the basement, everybody talks about haunted basements. Underneath the back of our stairs, going down into the basement, is where it would hang out and where it would hide. I never had an issue knowing where it was in the house because it made itself very known to me. I would walk down the stairs as fast as I possibly could, and you never were supposed to look back. If I looked back, I knew it would reach from under the stairs. There was no backing on the stairs in that house, so you could just feel something wanting to grab you. But I remember one time I was down there and I could hear this growling, huffing kind of sound. And that was my signal to kind of hurry up. And the next thing I know, I was like face to chest with this energy. And I could just feel it growling, and the vibration of the whole thing just shook me to my core. And I took up going up the stairs and I ran into my bedroom, and I swore I was never going back down there. And it took me a couple of weeks to be able to have the nerve to get back down there.
I am just your basic guy that races motorcycles and lives a normal life and not tied to the paranormal community in any shape, way, or form, meaning I'm not a medium, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I've probably never been on a ghost hunt in my life. They tend to find me. So in the mid-'70s, my family had just purchased a new home. For the first time, we had moved out of a small house into a nice luxury home. And I'm not talking about a home that's creepy in any way, or a home that one would just look at it and go automatically, that's a scary place. No, this was a 6,000 square foot home ranch with a 3,000 square foot basement in the bottom. Father took me downstairs of this home and showed it to me. It was actually an underground parking garage for the cars. You could park 2 or 3 cars and things like that. Well, my dad had the grandiose idea. He says, "Son, we're gonna build this into the second half of the house, and you're gonna have your own place to live down here." And as a teenager, I'm thinking that's the coolest thing in the whole world. So comes late at night, we've bedded down. My parents are out of town on a business trip, and it's just the absolute perfect environment for a teenager. I got the whole place to myself, right? And I got one of my best friends over, and we're gonna spend the night. And we had a pool table too. That was kind of cool. And so it's time to go to bed. We shut down all the lights. Now these lights, they're not lamps. They're just the fluorescent lights in the ceiling. We're too early in the construction to have nice lamps and certain fixtures and furnishings. So we lay down and we go to bed and we turn all the lights off. Then this happened. one light, just one, kind of flickered a little bit. And I said, whoa, what was that? And a few seconds later, another light flickered. 15 minutes in, every light in this basement is just going off and on, off and on, off and on. And there's these weird sounds coming at the same time. I don't know if they were electrical sounds of the ballast of the lights clicking off and on, or if it was something else. I don't know. All I know was it was too freaky for us. And we run up the stairs and we shut the stairway door behind us. The stairway door has a little opening beneath it. And we went into my parents' room, and the direct view out of my parents' bed was straight to this stairway door. So all night long while we were in my parents' bed, we could see those lights down in the basement going off and on, flickering through the thing under the door. My dad was really concerned because fire hazards, etc. So he calls in the electrician and says, hey, my son says these lights were doing all this. I need you to check it out. And they come in, they check it out, and of course, they find nothing. So that was the first little appearance. So this first little thing, and no big deal. And nothing else happened for a while. So none of us are thinking paranormal at this point in time. But as we had moved into this house, we always heard things, or we always saw glimpses of things out of the corner of our eye. Even my dad, who was, the most non-believer on planet Earth, would say, did you see that? What was that, son? And I go, I didn't see anything. He goes, no, there's somebody just went through that room. I said, no, Dad, I don't think so. As we progressed into the future a little bit, I have my bedroom built downstairs. My downstairs living place is quite luxury, honestly. Multiple rooms, a pool table room, fireplace, a master bedroom, a master living room, its own kitchen. I mean, for a 15-year-old, I'm living large, right? So I'm laying in my bed one night, and my bed is positioned in this room, again, where I have two entrances into my bedroom. One coming from the pool table room, one coming from the master living room. Both doors are open. Now, when you're laying in the bed like that, and you're alone and it's pitch dark, because we're in a basement with no windows. So when the lights are off, it's really dark compared to a normal house. But I had learned the pattern of my parents' footsteps. As a kid, I could hear my mom and dad walk across the top. I could tell if it was my mom, I could tell if it was my dad. I could tell if they went into their bedroom, if they went into the living room, into the kitchen. I knew where they were at all times in the house, and I knew if they were coming down the steps into my lair. One night, it's really late, and I hear footsteps go across above my head, which was our living room, and instantly come down the steps. Well, my mom and dad were pretty big people, and I could tell who they were based on the pressure of the footstep. So it's kind of cool. So I could say, oh, that's dad coming down, or that's mom coming down. This particular sound coming down, in my mind, did not equal either my mom or my dad. And I'm thinking, wow, there's a stranger coming down the steps, and it's really late. What is that all about? It scared me a little bit. Again, not paranormal, just nobody wants a stranger walking in their house in the middle of the night, right? So they get to the bottom of the steps, they hang a left, and they go into the pool table room. They're not in my bedroom. That's a separate entrance coming in from the other side. But as they come into that room, typical pool table, pool balls laying on the table, I hear them grab a pool ball and just kind of go, just roll the ball and hear the balls bang together. So now I'm at full attention. I'm at full alert because I know there's someone in that room. And their next step is to go past the pool table, hang a left turn, and now they're in my bedroom. That's exactly what they did. This person or thing or entity or whatever it was, it comes to the doorway and stands in the doorway. And there is just enough backlight coming from a little small nightlight in that room, just enough backlight for me to see that this person filled the entire door frame from the top to the bottom to the left to the right, only leaving a little place in their shoulders to allow that light to pass through. And I'm thinking, holy cow, that is a huge person standing there. I'm laying in the bed with the covers over up to my neck, and my hands are underneath me, and I'm sitting there thinking, what is about to happen? Am I dreaming? Is this real? And they walk into the room. I raced dirt bikes at the time, and I had trophies in my room, a few trophies, and one of them was, they were in the floor. And as it stepped into the room, it knocked a trophy over. And now I've heard 2 physical evidences. I've heard the pool balls hit, and now I've heard this trophy go on the floor. I am totally convinced I'm about to be mugged. I'm totally convinced this is not going to end well. So I pull the covers off of my neck. I expose my arms. I ball my fist up. It walks over to my bed very silently. And then what probably one of the scariest moments of my life, it leans over in the bed as if it wants to see me, and it brings its face all the way to my face, this close. And I could tell it was trying to see, is there anything in the bed? Or at least that's what I thought. I couldn't take it anymore. I brought this fist around as hard as I could, and I'm like, whoo! And I didn't hit anything. There was nothing there. And the second I did that, it disappeared, vanished, everything went back to normal. Oh no, freaked me out. I throw the covers back. I run out the other side of my bedroom, straight up the steps, straight to my mom and dad's room, and I'm telling my dad there's somebody in the house. Somebody's in the house. It got so bad that we called the police. They come in the middle of the night, they check the whole house. All of our doors are locked from the inside, nothing disturbed. Everything is fine. So, I'm just a dumb kid that had a bad dream. At least that's what they're saying about me. I knew better. Because when I got up the next morning, that trophy was laying over in the floor. That was my physical evidence. The trophy, one trophy of all the other trophies in there was knocked over. Tried to point that out to my dad. Again, my dad is quite the non-believer, and this was so early in the game that there was no way he was going to believe that there was a ghost in the house. So after that, for many, many, many nights, I would hear various sounds. I'd hear creepy things. I'd hear stuff, and I would just keep it to myself because as a child or as a young teenager, I didn't want to be made fun of any more than I already was. And nobody was believing a word I said. So there was no point in me telling them that, hey, I heard sounds coming from the storage room, or I heard voices coming from the fireplace room. It just fell on deaf ears. So I just kind of had to take it.
My family and I, we moved to a new home, and it was kind of, well, I wouldn't say it was in the country, but it was woodsy, and at night it would get very, very dark, no street lights, anything like that, not many homes around. I can recall I was out playing with the kids in the neighborhood, and it got dark, and so I started walking home. I saw this fog, and I stopped. I don't know why I stopped to watch. I guess I was just intrigued. I've always been intrigued with things like that. So I stopped and I watched as it formed, and it started forming into this dress, really big, at the bottom, and it started forming up into a body, forming into a woman with no face. She had long hair, no color. It was still like kind of foggy, but it was, it looked like, I guess, like an old Victorian style dress, very old. But again, yeah, she had no face, and when I saw that, I was like, oh crap, I take off running, obviously, and I'm looking back, and she's keeping up with me. So I get to my parents' driveway, where the light from the garage is kind of reflecting to the road, and finally she just kind of disappeared. I took off running up the driveway. My dad was standing there, and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" I started, frantically. I saw a ghost. It was a lady in the road. She disappeared. She had no face. She chased me. Of course he thought it was funny.
Yeah, Okay, well, I went to college in central Pennsylvania, Lock Haven State College. It's now Lock Haven University. A lot of us guys were there, football players, and one night, my friend and I decided to go to this really old gymnasium. That's where the weight room was. And the building was, my gosh, built in like, 1890 or something like that. It was just kind of scary just to look at anyway. Gary and I went down to the gymnasium, and what it was you approach the building, there were steps down, and you went down into a basement. The weight room area was 2 rooms. One room had free weights. Another room with a locked door was the weight machines, like the universals and things like that. So Gary and I were in there lifting weights, and in about 10 or 15 minutes, we heard one machine going in the other room, then 2 machines, then 3. Then it sounded like every weightlifting machine in that room was just going full tilt, like a whole team was in there working out. We looked at each other. The door was locked. To get in there was a combination door lock. So we kind of like walked over there slowly. Gary undid the lock, took it off. We opened up the door. As soon as we opened the door, everything stopped. Boom. We had the light on. There was no sign of any motion, no sign of anybody. So we closed the door up and we kind of looked at each other like, this is pretty weird, but we didn't want to admit that we were kind of scared. So we were still down in the gym lifting weights a little bit. Then above us on the gymnasium floor, it was an old wood floor. We heard one guy running a lap, then 2, then it sounded like 3, then it sounded like a whole basketball team up there running laps on the basketball court. So Gary and I looked at each other. So we went out and we crept up and turned on the light to the gym. Nobody was there. And just like in that movie Ghostbusters, when they come running out of the library after they get slimed, that was Gary and I. Man, we took off. We left that place. We went back to the dormitory, told an upperclassman what happened, and he said, yeah, that place is haunted. What happened was back in like 1910, a guy was murdered up on the balcony that goes above the basketball court. He was stabbed to death, and he haunts it. And I want to tell you, he does a good job haunting it, because I will never go back in that place again.
A lot of times, spirit will wake me up in the middle of the night. I've had multiple experiences with this entity, this energy that appears as a black figure in a black robe. And many times I've woken up to this feeling of something breathing in my ear. And when I turn my head and open my eyes, there's this ginormous black hooded figure standing there. Sometimes it's very comforting. Other times I may see it across the room and it'll rush me. So I find myself like I'm literally crawling out of my bed. I actually gave myself a concussion on a bedroom wall, jumping out of the way of something coming at me. I was definitely not like the other kids around me. There were no other children talking about ghosts or seeing things, driving past cemeteries and seeing hundreds of spirits and just wondering, what is all that? Who are all those people? Realizing no one else around me can see that. But I learned very early on how to identify what my energy felt like and what spirit's energy felt like. I was 16 or 17 years old at the time, and I was hanging out at my mom's friend's house with my mom, and we were playing with something like a Ouija board. It's called a psychic circle. I thought it would be different than a Ouija board because it focused more on elements. It had a much more pagan feel to it in terms of celebrating the elements. It had always been a really wonderful experience. So we sat around this table at my mom's friend's kitchen. I noticed that I started to feel this tingly sensation going down my neck. And I wasn't really sure what was happening, but I knew that it felt really uncomfortable and I wasn't quite sure what was happening. As they continued playing, I remember something came through that caused them both to laugh. And the laugh was just the kind of laugh that chills you inside. It just didn't even sound like them. It was very cackly and very high pitched, but I remember it was like I could see these sound waves coming out of their mouth as they were laughing. And the next thing I knew, I was viewing the world around me as if my perspective was all the way in the back of my mind. I was watching the world around me from the back of the auditorium instead of through my own eyes. And all I could do was scream. I was absolutely terrified. I was overcome with the feeling of something else's energy. It didn't feel good, it didn't feel positive, and it definitely did not feel human. I could not stop screaming. I remember screaming to the point that it was almost like my face had altered and my jaw had locked, so I couldn't even close my mouth. And I grabbed the table with both hands and I looked at my mom, and I somehow was able to scream out to her, "Say the Lord's Prayer. I need you to pray." And they wouldn't stop laughing at first until she finally realized, oh my God, this is something serious. This is not okay. So she started praying as loud as she could, and I was holding onto the table screaming. And eventually I remember blinking and opening my eyes and being able to see from my eyes again. That is the very last time I have ever touched any type of Ouija board, psychic circle, anything that had to do with channeling spirit or opening myself up to be a channel for spirit. I learned at a very young age what demonic energy can feel like as it's flowing through you. And I feel very, very blessed that I was able to remove all of that energy and residual energy from my body and not carry it on with me. Little did I know that that same energy would revisit me as an adult working on a cold case for someone down in Florida. And the same energy made itself known during that interview, and I was much better equipped to address it, handle it, and not allow it to affect me in any way. So being a childhood medium and not exactly knowing that that's what you are, your coping mechanisms are kind of limited at that time. Lots of people rely on their faith. However, I grew up in a household where my father had been Catholic turned Protestant turned Methodist turned Catholic again, I believe. And my mom, my whole childhood was pagan. So there were many influences, but I was never really connected to a higher power, so to say. My coping mechanism is that I became an alcoholic at 12 years old. I was a full-blown alcoholic at 12. I would come home from school and drink. It was the only thing I found that allowed me to block out that frequency. So I learned early on that the way to dial back the frequency, I like to think about it like a radio dial. And I would use alcohol to turn the dial down. But eventually I learned that I can do that on my own. It was just it took a little bit of practice, but I eventually got myself clean and sober at 22. I've been sober for 21 years, which is still kind of hard to believe. But it took being able to understand and trust that, number one, I wasn't crazy. Number two, your experiences can be validated, which was a really big deal for me, to have someone else be able to say, oh, no, I see that too. Or there's no possible way for you to know what you know. That became clear to me when I was introduced to Reiki for the first time. And I had a vision of something in my mind that turned out to be the actual passing of my Reiki practitioner's husband, who had died very tragically. So it was very affirming to know that, like, I can understand how this all works without having to rely on any type of chemical dependency to turn that off. Once I became credible by choosing to be in recovery, and these signs, these symptoms, were still there. Things were still there. the ability to hear and see and feel, all of that was still there. So when I encounter people who may be skeptical of the paranormal or skeptical of mediums specifically, it is usually within the first 10 minutes that I'm able to connect with someone on the other side and completely change their mind.
Yeah, and I've got all kinds of stories, you know. As far as adulthood, I haven't really had anything happen in the last several years, which is good. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I guess my last experiences in adulthood would be probably in college. I would go and clean my sister and brother-in-law's house to get extra money. And I remember when they first bought the house, I walked through the doorway and I just felt that negative energy. And I didn't say much then because I knew that they would probably just laugh at me, you know. I was like, okay, I'm gonna let it go. You know, they were excited about their new home. I'm not gonna spoil that or make it any kind of negative experience. My nephew started talking about this man that he would see that would play with him, and it wasn't anything, I guess, bad, and we didn't know maybe if it was his imagination or what. Time went on, he would talk about his toys making noises on their own. He got where he was scared to go in his playroom anymore. He didn't want to go in there by himself. And then he started talking about eventually the man was mean to him. I can remember, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was washing dishes and my nephew had this basketball goal, like one of those that you hang on the wall and had the little plastic, little nozzle, or whatever you want to call it. The ball hits it, it makes the noise, you know. I started hearing this going off while I'm washing the dishes. And I'm like, oh man, here we go, you know. I walk in there, I turn the light on, and I walk over to this basketball goal, and I was like, you know what, I just want to see. I want to see what it would take to make this thing go off. Because maybe it's a malfunction, I don't know. So I started pushing down the lever, a little plastic lever, and I mean, I had to really, really push down to get this thing to make any kind of noise. I was like, okay, that's creepy, you know. I went back to washing dishes. I started hearing it again, and I heard other little things in his room as well. And I was like, okay, you know what? I don't care. I'm gonna finish. I'm just gonna clean the house, get my money, and I'm gone. So just shut up. I don't care, you know. So I went about my business. I didn't hear anything else. I was finishing up, and I remember I was mopping the bathroom. About that time, my sister and nephew get home, and I have the door shut. I'm shut, closed in there, you know, so I can get all the area of the floor. And I remember the bottom of the curtain, it just pinched. And now keep in mind, they had two very heavy curtains. The bottom pinched as if someone grabbed it. And I was like, okay. So I mopped a little more, you know, didn't pay much attention. And then I noticed the story kind of just slowly lifting up. Now keep in mind, there's no vents. There were no vents on the floor, and even if there were, these curtains were so heavy, it wouldn't be able to move them. But then it started moving up. Still pinched, as if someone was holding it, until it was straight up in the air, just levitating. Not moving, I mean all the way up, straight out, pointing at me, like it was taunting me. And about that time, I'd been telling my sister about different things that I was hearing and that I felt in her home since the beginning, and she kind of laughed it off. So I called her in there, opened the door, and she and my nephew came. They stood there, and her mouth just dropped and this curtain started going up and down, up and down. I get chills just thinking about it, honestly. It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. After that, I think, that was my sister's first experience with the paranormal. But she would experience much more after that. She would hear footsteps at night. They had an experience one time of laundry detergent flying off the shelf right in front of them, mid-daylight. There was this one time they told me that he was in the bathroom brushing his teeth, that she was in the next room over ironing. The doors open, they could see each other. And something just, BAM! Hit the curtain right next to him, like right next to his head. He said, "Why'd you throw something at me?" I didn't throw anything at you. And it would try to stir things up between them, I think. I had some friends at the time that were doing paranormal investigations. We said, "Hey, come over, we got something for you." So we did an investigation one night. We're all in there in the kitchen, and we had EVP recordings, the whole nine. I can remember sitting at the table just like this, just as I'm sitting right now, and my nephew had a paint by numbers on the table. It was sitting right next to me. And I literally, with my own two eyes, watched this thing go off the table. Flew. Fast forward a little while later that night, I'm sitting in the floor, and I say, if someone is here, repeat this. So I knock on the floor. Pop, pop. I kid you not, maybe 10 seconds later, the cabinet behind the dude that was standing right to the left of me, or I guess that's what it sounded like that's what it came from. Bam, bam! Scared the shit out of us. Then we listened back to the EVP recordings that we gathered that night a few days later. Just different questions we would ask, and introducing ourselves and things like that. And I remember just this evil voice coming on when I said, "What do you want? What do you want with us? Or what do you want with my nephew, my sister? Why do you make his toys go off? Why are you here? Who are you?" And this evil voice came on and said, "Ask us. Ask us." Said it twice. And another recording we had gotten that night, we heard this lady's voice. And I was like, and this, I remember I said, "This is my sister, Emily. She lives here." This lady's voice came on and said, "Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm." My sister's home alone. She gets in the bath, steaming hot water. I remember her telling me that, she just hoped that she didn't hear anything that night. Everything would be okay. She could just sleep. She said like her water kind of went cold, and she felt this coldness just go down her spine. Like something just caressed her back. She jumped out of there and said, "Okay, you win. Let me grab some clothes. I'm gone." She went to my parents and stayed there for a while. She and my nephew after that. And until they had a pastor come bless the house. He said the presence was coming from the bathroom really strong, where they used to have a window next to the shower. They covered that up. And he said it was like a demonic presence, a perverted demon is what he said. After he blessed it, that was it though. It went away. My sister and brother-in-law got closer, and their marriage got stronger. And I think that a lot of that was all the fighting, all the negativity. It was due to that evil presence in that house. I fully believe that it was causing that. It wanted them to separate.
The day came that me and one of my best friends, James, we had girlfriends. We're probably freshmen in high school, and the girls came over to my parents' house, and we're all going to hang out. And we're in the living room of my parents' lair on the upstairs. We're in the living room, and my dad, who's some of you may remember Archie Bunker TV show. Well, my dad was the epitome of Archie Bunker, sitting in his lawn chair with his feet. I mean, his nice recliner chair, and he's got his feet back, and he's watching TV. And the four of us kids are sitting on this big long couch, and we're just talking. And I don't know why, I don't remember why, but the girls excused themselves from the room to go out to the garage so they could have their own private conversation about something. Now, this house was a pretty typical entrance. Like, you had the garage where you pull your car in, you walk through the door, and you come through a laundry room, and you walk through the next door, and you're into the master living area. And all the doors were open, but they stepped out into the garage, and the storm door, or what we call a screen door, had shut behind them. But they're out in the garage. We could kind of hear them talking. They were just kind of mumbling along, but James and I stayed on the couch, and we're talking to my dad about silly stuff and nothing paranormal. Next thing you know, these girls are screaming for their life. They're screaming as if they're going to die. It was no different than if there was a slasher out there cutting them up with a knife. When this all happened in like a second and a half, 2 seconds, me, James, and my father jump up and we run straight to that garage. And we slam open the door. The two girls are just sitting there talking. And they're going like, what? What do you want? What's wrong? Why do you look like that? Why are you so freaked out? What's going on? And my dad, again, he's like, just what in the hell are you two doing? What kind of a sick game are you playing? Are you really that stupid? You bunch of teenagers. I don't like this. I don't like that a bit. And I don't ever want you to do that again. Well, these are teenage girls. They're like, why is he so upset with us? I'm scared to even be here. I just want to go home now. Jerry, take me home. You know, this is your dad's mean. I'm like, and I looked her straight in the eye. I said, look, I got to side with my dad on this one. What are you two doing? You can't scream bloody murder and that you're getting axe murdered in the garage and not expect us to come running, and then you're not doing it. You don't even have blood on you. What's wrong with you? You know, it's like, and so we're all just sitting here in this perplexed moment going, what just happened? So we chalked it up. My dad certainly chalked it up as just an evil prank that all four of us were going to play on my dad. And my dad's like, okay, guys, you got me. You ever do that to me again, you're not allowed to even come back in my house. He really did. He thought it was just the four of us playing a trick on him. The very next night, me and my father are sitting on the couch in the same circumstances. Girls have gone home, friends have gone home. It's just my family. It's 3 people in the house, my mom, my dad, and myself. Dad's in his recliner. I'm over on the couch. Neither one of us are talking to each other. We're watching whatever television show interests us that night. My mom never liked our television, so she had her own television in her own master bedroom, and she would retire to her master bedroom to where she would just have her own privacy, and me and my dad would stay in the living room. You got to remember what I said about my mom. My mom was not a prankster. My mom was at the best Judy Cleaver. She just your typical wonderful household mom. My dad and I are sitting there. What happens? My mother starts screaming. She starts screaming just exactly like those 2 teenage girls did. Now, my mom does not do that. She's screaming. It's horrible. It's horrible. She's screaming like she's dying. My dad and I look at each other and said, no way. And we jump up and we run around the corner and we run back to her bedroom. And go in. And my mom looks at, she's laying there in the bed, and she just looks at us like, what? What do you want? And my dad's like, woman, what is wrong with you? Why are you screaming? Who is in here? What's going on? My dad's name's John. Mom goes, John, have you lost your mind? And I'm just sitting here in the background perplexed. And my dad says, you just did to us exactly what I told you those little bratty teenage girls did to us. And I said, Mom, I heard it with my own ears. You were getting slaughtered by something. What's up? Who's doing this? Who's controlling this place? My mom says, you know better than that. So my dad walked back in the living room, and now we're perplexed. We are really mystified. I'm a little scared. Dad is thinking more logically like, okay, there's a bigger plan going on here. Somebody's messing with us. And it's not paranormal. But yes, it was paranormal. It was very paranormal.
I basically literally worked myself to death. In 2007, I was living in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was working. I was sick. I'm susceptible to like bronchial asthma type things, but the economy was kind of going down, so I had to work harder and longer to keep my numbers up. It was getting so bad. I had pneumonia, maybe double pneumonia. I was having to get up at 5 in the morning and doing breathing treatments, taking every over-the-counter drug I could find just to clear my lungs so I could show up at the office at 8 o'clock. It was a horrible schedule. I was smoking at the time, which was horrible. I could barely walk across a room. So, long story short, February 21st, 2008, I was just so sick I couldn't even go to work. I took the kids to school. I went to see a doctor. They basically didn't even want to see me because I didn't have an appointment. I went back home. I spent all day on breathing treatments, asthma medicine, drinking cough syrup, you name it, anything to clear my lungs up. And my wife kept asking me if I was okay, and I always wanted to put on the right face. Yeah, I'm fine, don't worry about me. So I just got continually worse and worse and worse. Everybody went to bed that night about 10:30. I knew I was getting into some really deep stuff here. I could feel my body starting to shut down. I was going to the bathroom and eliminating everything I could, and I could feel, man, I'm starting to die. So I called I made 911 call shortly after 11 p.m. And this person on the other end, I'll never forget this. I told them, I need an ambulance. I can't breathe. I'm having like a bad asthma attack. She said, heart attack. I said, no, asthma attack. I can't breathe. She said, heart attack? I said, no. So here I am dying, talking to this dispatcher about what's wrong. And finally I said, yeah, heart attack, right? Just so I could get some things going. So I said, just send an ambulance, no alarm, no siren, no nothing. I told my son to open up the front door. Here they sent an ambulance, 2 fire engines, and a police car in a cul-de-sac. I lit up the whole cul-de-sac. I was on my hands and knees. I was so sick I couldn't even stand up. I couldn't breathe. My oxygen level, according to the EMTs, had dropped so low that if I didn't get on the gurney for them to take me to the ambulance, I was gonna die right in my living room. And it was a cold February night, February 21st, 2008. And I thought as soon as it took me outside in this weather, it's gonna choke me out and I'm gonna die. So anyway, they get me into the ambulance and off we go. And I knew I was in deep trouble because they weren't even talking in the ambulance. Not a word was being said. It made me real nervous. My wife, who's an excellent driver, couldn't keep up with the ambulance. I saw her back in the distance and we kept pulling away from her, so I knew these guys were moving really fast. We pulled into the emergency room in the Greer Hospital. I'm laying there and they're cutting the clothing off of me. I had been in the environmental business at the time, and I was doing a chemical cleanout at a plant in Georgia. So I was working with cyanides and acids and halogens and all different types of things. And I thought, well, maybe I have some sort of effect going on in my bloodstream. So They're writing, I'm talking, and everything else, and I can't breathe. This nurse came up to me and she said, "Hey, Tom, we're going to give you a shot to relax you, so just so you can breathe." Okay, fine. Boom. So she gave me the shot and out I went. So at 1:17 a.m., I woke up feeling nauseous, like I'm going to have to throw up. And I know I have to throw up. And I woke up. And here they tied my hands to the bed. They had intubated me, tube down the throat, into my lungs, whatever. They had intubated me. And I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it because I know if I throw up, I'm going to die. Well, I couldn't fight it. And I was really mad because he tied my hands to the bed. I couldn't pull the tube out. I couldn't do anything but sit there and look at it. So up it came. It went into my lungs. And I just sat there and watched the clock from 1:17 to 1:19. And I'm thinking, so this is how it all ends. You know, I'm not ready for it to end like this. This sucks. You know, I'm not done. I'm not done with this life, you know, and I'm mad. So just before I died, I looked up and I said, "Take me, God, let's go." So lungs filled up, I died. I went up, I guess up through the roof. There wasn't a tunnel or any of that stuff. I found myself up above the clouds in like space, and I went to the brightest light I could find. And I went right to it, and I got in it. And this light was so bright that under normal circumstances, like a bright LED light, you couldn't look at it without it hurting your eyes. This whiteness was so brilliant, but my eyes felt great. I felt great. I felt like I did when I was a young guy, full of health and energy. It was all white. There was no top, there was no bottom, there was no floor, there was no side. I was just there. Something caught me back to the corner of my eye, and I looked, and here comes my father, who died in 1989, and this is 2008. And Dad walked up. And by the way, you know, people wonder, well, what do they wear? Well, Dad was wearing his golf cap, his Izod golf shirt, and some pants. Dad died cutting the grass in the yard, just dropped, so maybe that's what he was wearing. Anyway, he walked up to me, and I said, "Dad, I died, didn't I?" He said, "Well, not really, Tom." And he said, "It's not your time yet. Your job is to raise your boys." He said, "That's your job, raise your boys." So I'm looking at Dad here. I look over and I see three guys. One is Tim. He died when we were teenagers. He drowned in a river suddenly. Another fellow, Joe, he was in the military in the Philippines, and his fiance was drowning. Joe went in to save her. He saved her, but he ended up losing his life. And another fellow I coached baseball with, Dan, in Louisville, Kentucky. I looked, and each one of them said the same thing. It's not your time yet. Your job is to raise your boys. When it's your time, it's your time. You know, there's nothing we can do about it. I was dead for 23 minutes. That's the longest time. Other times I heard intermittently 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But they brought me back that night. They didn't know what to do with me. We'll take him off life support. We'll see what happens. Either he makes it or he doesn't. And I was okay with that. I would have been okay with that. And my wife was like, "Okay, let's go, let's see." As they're taking me off life support, I find myself in this beautiful pasture. The sky was a beautiful blue. I was at the foot of a rolling hill, and at the top of this hill there is this cross. It had to be 30, 40 feet high. Next to it, to the right, was a tree, a dead tree, no leaves. So I looked up at this and I just started walking. And I chose to walk into the bottom of the cross. I went in it and I just started climbing up. And it was one of the most physically excruciating things I've ever done in my life. I take 3 steps up, slide back 2, repeatedly, going all the way up. I popped my head up out of the top of the cross, and I woke up, and my wife was standing beside beside me, and I squeezed her arm, and I had my eyes open, and she said, "Oh my gosh, look, he's alive." The nurse said, "Listen, we're going to pull this intubation tube out of you. It's going to feel like it's coming from the center of your belly all the way up through." So they pull she pulls this vacuum cleaner hose up out of my mouth, and I go, "Fucking A," right? And my wife goes, "Well, he's back," you know? So after all this religious experience and everything, that's the first thing I really say.
So these things just kept going on and on. These little tidbit things would happen. And finally the day came that I had another friend come over. He brought his ski equipment and he drives in, and we go downstairs, and my bedroom now had same place. It had evolved into two really nice queen beds in this bedroom. Over in the corner, we set our snow skis up. And we're laying in the bed one night, just after we had been snow skiing, went to do some night skiing, and we come home, we lay our snow skis in the corner, and we go to bed, and everything's fine. But it wasn't. Because somewhere in the middle of the night, his name was Mike. Mike wakes up, and Mike is screaming at me to wake up. I'm like, "What are you doing, Mike?" He goes, "Can't you see it? It's pitch black." As I'd mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of light. We had a little teeny tiny night lights positioned around, but it was still very dark. I said, "What are you talking about, Mike?" And Mike goes, "It's in the corner. It's standing right there." I go, "What?" He goes, "I can't describe it." I said, "Well, try." He goes, "It's a monster. I don't know what it is. It's just right there. Just get up and turn the lights on and look." I get up, turn the lights on. There's nothing in the corner. Nothing there at all. With the exception of our snow skis. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most people would say, well, he saw the snow skis. He was having a bad dream. And it materialized into a monster for him. This is not a 15-year-old teenager. This is a freshman in college. This guy's been around a little bit now. He gets up. He grabs his snow skis. He grabs his personal belongings. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. And he leaves. And he says, "I'm never, ever coming back around you or this house again. Ever." I said, "Mike, you had a bad dream." Now in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, the ghost probably got him, but I'm trying to convince him. He says, "Don't even call me." We go back to college. We live in the same dormitory. This guy will not talk to me for years. He's gone out of my life because of that one incident. He just boycotted me forever. It seemed like, it just seemed like Thursdays were a popular day. And I'll tell you why. Because I went to college and I took classes early in the week, and I didn't have to go to school on Thursday, so I would come home I didn't have to have classes on Friday, so I'd come home Thursday evening, and I'd been away for a few days. And it seemed like whenever I went away for a few days, the very day I got back, it seemed to be a very active paranormal day, as if they were waiting on me. Or mad I got back, or excited I got back. So I kind of started taking it personal. I started trying to tie in this thing to me, because it seemed to happen around me a whole lot. It's now the mid-90s. It's 20 years later. We're all grown people. Many things had happened. Mom and Dad were completely convinced that our house was now weird, at the very least, but still stuck in denial mode. I got off racing in the jet ski world, and I had this big downstairs, and I had all these friends in the jet ski world that were all going to a race that was kind of near where I live. So they all came to my house to stay with me. It's probably like 10 people, maybe even more. And they're just scattered out. The pool room had people laying in the floor. My beds were occupied. The couches were occupied. It looked like a typical college, party where everybody just kind of laid down and went to sleep. The middle of the night, one of my friends, he's just rolling around on the floor back and forth, and another friend of mine goes, "Hey, you probably should check on Chris." I said, "Why?" "Because he's saying something's killing him." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "No, something's killing Chris right now." We're a bunch of, we're jet skiers. We're kind of like the party guys, and we're not thinking ghosts. Or at least they're not, but I am. And he's just getting rolled all over the place. He's getting mauled. And he's screaming. Now he starts screaming for his life. Just like those girls did. Just like my mom did. But we're watching this happen in real time. And he's screaming, it's killing me, help me, help me, help me. You know, why won't you people help me? These jet ski guys, they know nothing of the house. I'm not even about to try and explain paranormal to a bunch of these guys. And this one particular friend, he's just like, Jerry, this is serious. This guy is having some type of a fit or some type of a seizure or something's going on or something's killing him and I can't see it. The kid finally calms down after being mauled. He gets up. I remember he had an acoustic guitar with him. He grabs that acoustic guitar and just like Mike had done years ago, he gets up. He says, I'm leaving. I'm never coming back. He grabs his personal things. Right out the door he goes to his car and he leaves and off he goes. I never see him again. He won't have anything to do. He will not come to this house. He will not come to this town. He will not come near me. If he sees me, he ghosts me. No pun intended, but he does not hang out with me and will not hang out with me. Wow. I ultimately ended up losing my parents, just natural causes. They just aged out and I lost my parents. And so now we have the house, or I have the house. I'm alone at this house, and it's time to put this house up for sale. But we decided to do a remodel on the house before we sell it, you know, maybe update it and bring it up to speed. And the team that we brought in to remodel the house, they're tearing down the same walls that we built. And one day the lead carpenter guy comes to me and says, I can't continue. I said, what do you mean you can't continue? He says, I cannot stay in this house another minute. And I failed to mention to you, this was such an arduous job that they were actually, and the house was not occupied. So they moved into the house. A team of 2 or 3 moved into the house and were accommodating the house while doing their remodel. He says to me, he says, every night my tools are misarranged. Every night my saw blades from my table saw, they're taken off of the shaft of the motor that runs the table saw. I thought, what? That's insane. You can't just, a saw blade just doesn't fall off. That requires tools. He said, that's exactly right. He said, it happens every night. And he says, I'm leaving. I'm coming off the job. I'm sorry, but I cannot finish this job. And I said, really? I said, has the house been talking to you? And he goes, it talks to me every day. I said, what does it say to you? He says, I don't know what it says, but it's telling me to stop this job and leave now. And that's exactly what happened. The entire crew walked, leaving me with a house that's half remodeled, you know, it's exposed wires, no sheetrock, walls, kind of like where we started from. By now we're up into the 2000s, 2010-ish. I don't know where we are, but we're up in modern times where any TV show you turn on, there's paranormal this, paranormal that, ghost hunter this, ghost hunter that. There's a TV show for everything. And I thought, you know, wouldn't it be interesting to have real paranormal investigators come in and check the house out? Not a TV show, not something goofy that just wants ratings. I'm talking about real self-proclaimed paranormal investigators. They wanted to tell me it was my parents. They wanted to tell me my parents were trying to make contact with me. They wanted to try and tell me this and that, and all the typical cliche things you would expect for somebody to say to you. I wasn't buying it. So first of all, this was happening long before my parents passed away. They wanted to tie off on that and say that they're trying to come back and communicate with me. And I just wasn't buying it at all. Brought a second team in. Second team comes in. For the same company, by the way, but second team comes in. I said, I'm going to be present this time. They bring in their cameras, their EVP recorders, all their gadgets and weird technologies and things that I don't understand. They bring it all in and they set it all up. And they put some type of night vision camera on me. And the second they put this night vision camera on me, the cameraman, he's still in setup mode, by the way. He's not even trying to catch anything. He's just like, here, let me get sound and focus, you know? He puts his night vision camera on me and he jumps back. And he goes, oh my God, Jerry, turn around. And I turn around and I don't see anything. He says, no, it's right there behind you. right there. And what does this guy start describing? He starts describing the exact same thing that Mike saw back when I thought they were snow skis standing in the corner. He says it's like this creature, but it's not, but it is. It's not, but it is, but it's human, but it's not. And he says, this is incredible. He calls his producer over, and he comes over and he's looking through the camera and he goes, oh my gosh. He says, is that real? Because apparently it was fuzzy and a little distorted. And they're like, Jerry, don't move. Just don't move, because it's right behind you. I'm paranoid. I'm panicking. I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure how I can say it. And mind you, I'm an adult now. This is not a teenage story. I'm a grown man. And these guys are telling me there's some type of monster right behind me. Naturally, having a lot of my dad in me, I'm thinking, okay, just a bunch of other shysters trying to, get some type of ratings or something. Although they're not a TV show. They're just paranormal investigators. They had a sound system, for lack of a better word, and they had headphones on, and they kept hearing these voices. And they're recording it. So we had physical evidence of it. That made it really cool. And they're recording it, and they keep telling me, Jerry, just talk to it. Just say something. And I asked them point blank, are you here because I am? And emphatically on the EVP, it come back, yes. Oh, that creeped me out, because I really didn't want to be responsible for this, but apparently I am. The biggest thing that scared me the most was just the fact that how tied to me it was. But unlike possession or obsession, it must have been bound, because it didn't follow me anywhere. I went off to college. I went off and bought my own house, and I've never had any problems. Never had any problems. But every time I would go back to that house or go back in that house, which was many times, many other stories would happen. Something would always happen. So my now wife says, well, I have a friend who, she's some kind of shaman priestess, and I may not be correct on that title, but she said she's something special in this particular world. Says she can cleanse the spirit. And so we'll call her up. So she walks around the yard, got some sage smoking around, and she's chanting some stuff that I don't understand. But she says that this house was built on her best description was almost like a subway, like a Union Station, like a crossroads of spiritual world. And there were many spirits coming and going, and this house was it was built right on top of this, and it's not been one spirit, it could have been many spirits. I don't agree with that. Maybe it was built on some bad ground, maybe not. But I will say this. The lady did her thing. We sold a house, and there's not been one other incident since.
I kind of look at being a medium as having and being a lighthouse. And connected through my crown chakra, I'm able to turn my light on. And if I put a name associated with it, I can usually get a hold of that spirit, if they're still around and still able and willing to communicate. I have not found that religion is a barrier to this at all. I have had people come through that are complete and total atheists, agnostic, and then I've done readings for devout Christians, and Mormons have come through as well. That was actually a really cool experience, I won't lie. It's amazing because I can see the energy with people. I can feel the energy with people. And for people who may or may not believe, it's a matter of finding that frequency that they're on and being able to see what's around it and calling it forward. And it can be pretty life-changing. In my journey, I have learned that this is not something I can get away from, nor am I supposed to get away from. I feel like I learned that lesson when I got sober. By the time I actually went to rehab, I had maybe about 3 months left to live clinically before my entire body had shut down. At that point, I had been throwing up blood for a year. I was the alcoholic that was passed out in a snowbank outside the ATM. And for years, I spent trying to basically kill myself to get away from this. And it wasn't until I realized that maybe I'm supposed to be here to be able to use this to help other people. And that is exactly what I've done. I've learned that I can take these abilities and take these interactions and help bring peace to other people. One of the biggest passions I have is working with children. Helping the other children in this area, in my community, and all over the world that are childhood mediums or childhood empaths, and to be able to help them to understand and to validate for them so that they don't have to choose some type of substance or some other way to deal. A lot of times, bringing that validation and letting the kid know, is the person that you're seeing, do they look like this? And I might be able to describe it to them. And you can watch the child just completely change in that minute, where something that know that they're the only person in the world has seen. And then here I am sitting across from them telling them I can see it too, and I can see it right now. And it will absolutely bring a tremendous amount of peace. Being able to help someone who is grieving the loss, especially from suicides. I'll say that I do a lot of readings for people who are suicide survivors, family members and spouses and children that are left behind. And being able to connect them, being able to provide some answers and things that they've only had conversations with this other person in spirit, and I'm answering those questions for them. I understand now that the whole point is to be alive, to help to remind people that we're here to live, that we're not here to suffer, and that we're not here to just have an existence. We're here to live and to love. And that's how I've been able to change my approach to being a medium.
Well, who's there? I think our loved ones. I think we do have guardian angels. I know I've got a guardian angel. I've probably got a couple of them. Years ago, I bartended at a big fancy hotel in York, Pennsylvania. And there was this guy there. He fancied himself as some type of spiritualist. And he looked at me and said, "Oh my gosh." He said, "You are loaded with angels." He said, "You've got angels all over you." And I do think we have protectors that we can't see. They're in another dimension. I do think loved ones can see us, that sense what we're going through. Like, how did my dad know? And my friends, how did they know I had sons? You know, they know what you're doing. They're with you. I think that there are bad spirits, and I think they're floating around, and I think they're looking for weakness. And I think that if you seek it, it's gonna find you. Ouija boards, when we had these problems in my house growing up, we threw the Ouija board out, along concurrently with when my brother had that experience. I mean, it's gone. But I think if you seek it, man, it's gonna come to you. And it's gonna mess with you bad, and you're gonna regret it.
So if you were gonna ask me, who's there? My answer is everything you could possibly think of. The dark side, the light side, the alien side, it's all there. It's just a matter of if you're willing to tap into that frequency, or if you're going to allow fear to prevent you from having a true awakening of why you're here.
There are things in this world that go unexplained. Things that only certain ones of the living can see or hear. Souls, entities, demons. What traps them here, and why do they only show themselves to few? And why are they still here? Is it something that you're born with? The unexplained.